All right, welcome back to the F3 Northeast Wake Q Source podcast. I'm your host, Blake Anderson, Money Pit, and today I've got with me Jeff Cook, Spit Valve. Spit Valve, thanks for coming back on the podcast.
Pleasure.
So, Pax, we are turning pages. We're in quadrant 3, Q3.1, in the quadrant of lead right, and the topic this week is shared leadership. And I specifically chose Spit Valve this week because Spit Valve is the incoming Nantan of the shared leadership team for our region. And I know Spit Valve, when I first, it was probably a year plus before I even understood there was an SLT or shared leadership team. And then when I heard the term Nantan, I had no idea what that meant. And so I thought, now that I do know, I'll get you on the podcast. Great way for us to introduce some new packs to the leadership team of F3, you as the incoming Nantan, and then we'll talk more about how this applies to leadership at large. So, why don't you share with us a little bit about what the SLT is and what the Nantan means?
Sure. Well, the overall concept of F3 is free to lead, right? So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to have an official position to do something amazing. We've had our feminine hygiene February. We've had all kinds of stuff where people just said, "Hey, what about this?" and we run with it. But sometimes you do need a little bit of structure around what we're trying to accomplish here. And the SLT is that when we broke off 3 years ago, anniversary coming up, August 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
When we broke off 3 years ago, we knew we needed some structure. And you have the Nantan, who's kind of like the CEO, the president
The
of the group.
king, hence the crown today.
Yeah, yeah. I was worshiping the Queen as I went through the Burger King drive-through this afternoon. Um, and then we have a first FQ, usually a pair. We have a second FQ, third FQ, Q source Qs. We have a comms Q, Weasel Shaker. We have a Ruck Q. Um, and these guys basically bring the needs that they're out there at their posts and they see the need of the packs, um, and help to push us forward. A big thanks to the previous SLTs. A lot of these guys serve for 2 years, and we try to rotate, have one guy rotating in as one guy is rotating out. So we always have um, some veterans on the board, if you will. Um, One thing that Yoda tells me, if you guys know Yoda, when he comes up into Northeast Wake, he always talks about that we do it right.
Hmm.
And that's not by accident. That's the SLT, that's you, that's the PAX. Um, also, just 2 Saturdays ago, a guy brought an FNG, wasn't in the best of shape, and he had asked Bean Counter. He said, "Where should I take my buddy? I want to introduce him to F3. Should I take him to this place, or should I take him to the farm?" And Bean Counter said, "Take him to the farm all day, every day.
Hmm.
They know what's right."
Hmm.
And that is, we should all be patting ourselves on the back. That's the kind of environment we want to be here at F3. So the shared leadership team, last 2 years under Green Thumb, awesome job. Just my job here is to not screw it up. Um, uh, but I do think over the next probably 3 to 5 years is going to be big for us. This is where you see some explosive growth, or do we atrophy and just sort of keep the status quo, or do we grow? What can we do with this group? So that's what the SLT is here to help drive.
Well, that's exciting to know uh, that you're looking towards the future and coming in as a new leader. You're taking the good work that was laid before you by Green Thumb and saying, how can we build upon it and continue to surround yourself with a shared leadership team of folks who are looking through different lenses, looking at the needs of the greater community, and all together saying, let's continue to press forward and let's continue to leave a legacy. And what an honor it is to hear that these folks that are in different regions and spend quite a bit of time with us speak so highly of what we're doing. And like you said, it's a product of the packs, the culture we've set, and the SLT. And I think it's a product of um, the concept of SLT. And so I'd like to kind of move into that concept. So shared leadership, so we say SLT, shared leadership team. It's not senior leadership, it's shared leadership. And in this book, I think Dred does a great job unpacking the importance of shared leadership. And so shared leadership says that a leader's got to make room for other folks that have a different skill set, different gifts, different perspectives, that have a shared common virtue and a shared mission to join him to be able to do something greater than himself. And I think we're seeing that with the growth of our region and the fact that other packs in other regions are recognizing that as well.
Yeah, the with my orchestra with F3, we have a great combination of guys. When we go looking out to recruit SLT members, anyone interested, obviously throw your name up. But like, hey, we need a server guy, we need an IT guy, we need a fundraising guy, we need a verbal magician guy. So when they hand the microphone, if someone wants to do an interview, that guy right there, boom, he's not clamming up, and he can enunciate our vision, that kind of thing. So I can't do what you do. I think we
Mm-hmm.
talked about this before. I love Q Source, but the way you're able to lead us through it, with from a position of past knowledge and leadership, that's not something I could do. So we're looking for a Blake or a Shark
Mm-hmm.
Bait, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Weasel Shaker stuff. I thought I was doing a great job within I think 9 minutes of becoming Weasel Shaker. Menthol sending out all the slash roster and all kinds of cool stuff, assembling the A team, the ballistics guy and the driver guy and the BA Baracus guy. I'm just Hannibal Smith sitting in the background watching everybody go to town,
Mm-hmm.
um, and realizing that if you think you can do this yourself, whether it's life, whether it's your
Yeah.
marriage, whether it's SLT, you're being foolish.
Yes.
So a man has got to know his limitations,
Mm-hmm.
and then um, and finding guys that can help build a team, you know.
Yeah, I love this quote. If you're going to go fast, go alone. If you're going to go far, go together. Right. And it's the perfect quote to really emphasize the importance of shared leadership. Now, another reason I'm glad that you came on for this is you've shared enough over the years of us spending time together and through Q Source over the last couple of years that, you've worked in rather large corporate environments for a really long time. And my guess is that you've seen leadership probably sometimes done really well in a shared leadership form, and probably a whole lot of times not always done that well. And so I bet you that you can speak to the importance of doing shared leadership well and what's possible, but also how when leadership isn't done well, the ceiling that gets or the lid that gets put over the head of the organization. I'd love to just to hear some experiences or thoughts that you have about forming leadership teams and what's possible or not through the team that's formed.
A lot of what I do, you end up with, instead of the A team where you have three guys who are good at this and two guys who are good at that and one guy who's good at that, you end up with like six guys who are all the same.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
and that can be a problem where you have six network guys or six programmers. Um, but just through the needs of the business, you need to have somebody be the leader there. And
Hmm.
that doesn't always, you're not creating the SLT. You have somebody who's maybe not a gifted leader, but because they're very successful at programming, let's say, they become the de facto leader. And they're not really a leadership type, and these are all their former peers, and now are they going to rise to the occasion? Maybe some do. A lot of them don't, and like I said, we don't have the variety of skill sets. We all have one skill set.
Hmm.
um, and then sometimes you also end up with the guy who is just wants to lead. We talked about last Wednesday, there was a SEAL graph where they talked about um, a high performing person and then a trustworthy or virtuous leader person, and
Hmm.
where you fell on that graph.
Hmm.
And a high performing leader is very easy to measure. The stock price goes up.
Right.
The value of the company goes up. Unemployment is low. You did a
Mm.
rollout of this, that, and the other. How do you measure virtue? I mean, how do
Yeah.
you how do you how do you measure that? So you end up with a lot of high performing leaders who maybe aren't particularly virtuous, um, and they're just yelling commands down from on high, um, and you don't have that feeling of free to lead. That's one of the questions we get all the time. Do you feel that if you
Yeah.
make a suggestion, you will be taken seriously by leadership?
Mm.
And the answer is always poor, always poor. People are afraid to speak up. That's the one thing, I think we talked about a Q source 2 weeks ago on a Saturday. Anybody with any idea, please bubble it up. Please bring
Hmm.
it to us. maybe we'll say, hey, yeah, we actually tried that a year ago and it didn't go poorly, but maybe now's the time. Or maybe we'll say, wow, we had never thought of that. That's amazing. Let's do it. Um, that's we all, as the peons here, like me, we often feel that our leaders are not listening to us. They're making decisions in a vacuum. Um, Whether they feel that way or not, that's what it looks like to us. So they're making decisions in a vacuum, not taking in all the parts of the business, and only driving toward stock price, stock price, stock price.
Let me ask you this. Do you feel like more is possible for the teams you work on if they were better led?
Absolutely. And I currently work for a very aggressive leader who
Hmm.
is which that's one style. I've worked for very passive leaders. He actually, I feel like, works for a very passive leader. So it's an interesting mix where you have an aggressive guy working for a passive guy who kind of plays defense. Um, and at least in my company, if you play defense, you're usually the one getting the short end of the stick. But if
Hmm.
you're playing too aggressive, you end up ticking off a whole bunch of people. So I've also worked for the guy who unfortunately retired 3 years ago. He was probably the best person I've ever worked for. He was our, I mean, he's two levels above me, but I mean, you felt like you could talk to him. If you met him in the hallway, we played ping pong with him. And you always felt like he was prepared.
Hmm.
So the difference in leaders, yeah. And even, I feel like even if the company actually wasn't, if you like, tangibly more or less successful, we felt more successful
Hmm.
under him.
Yeah, and you felt more fulfilled.
Yeah.
So in very, contrasting ways, I've never worked in big corporate. I've always been a small business guy. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 25, so I'm almost 20 years in. And in the small business world, you don't succeed unless you build a dynamic shared leadership team. You go belly up really quick. You don't have the sheer number of resources to hire the wrong people. One wrong hire can tank your entire business.
Yeah.
And we do hire the wrong people, undoubtedly accidentally. But the better we get in the small business world, we started to realize over the last few years, my partner and I, that gifting is so important. And so, we kind of have a hiring criteria, and it starts with character first, always character, and then chemistry, or and slash culture, and then competency. And competency is always last because those things have to get fit. But ultimately, we have to have people with various viewpoints with completely complementary skills, and we are always looking for people that share different points of view and different skill sets, because we have to round out a small team and try to leverage it to do much more. And in starting anything, it's so important. Maxwell talks about the law of the lid, that the leader is going to be the lid over the organization. And I think the growth that we've seen in our region in F3 is absolutely a product of leadership. Organizations do not grow without a leader facilitating that growth. Now, the fact that you may not have known who the Nantan was and who the first FQ was or second FQ was is irrelevant. The point is, our growth is proof that someone was doing a good job with that leadership, and it's created a culture that allows that to thrive. Organizations begin to stagnate when they don't have the variety of thought and they're not making room for different viewpoints. And that's we I think we've all kind of experienced that power. And I want PAX to be able to ground this concept into, one, their F3 experience, but two, where they're at and how they lead, whether it's their family or it's where they're working, and the power of bringing that variety together to form a team.
100%, 100%. I love what he says here that combination of an SLT is a leader's best guardrail against the flux because the odds are low that four men leading together will simultaneously be afflicted by it. Um, you have a crappy day. Well,
Mm-hmm. Right.
your wife isn't there. She's there to save the family. Or we have a crappy day as an SLT. Well, if I'm having a down day, do you think Thingamabob's also going to be having a down day?
Yeah,
Probably
probably
not.
not.
There'll be some there to add stability. Um, yeah, and then I mean, orchestra is the greatest example of building the sum is more or the total is more than the sum of its parts, and the RSLT and F3 is just another example of that.
And you put your finger on something that I totally missed. You know, I was speaking from a given. Of course, you would have a team, but we often have to back up, especially in small business community or someone starting something new, whether it's a workout group, a new region, a ministry, a church, or whatever. And you can't. There's only so much you can do alone. You know, you have to form a team as quickly as possible, because to your point, when you have just a few at the top who are just trying to stranglehold the organization with all power and control, the organization is so vulnerable to a bad decision, so vulnerable to a bad day. Versus, I love the F3 is a flat organization. It's not hierarchical, right? It's growing out organically, and it's able to continue to grow faster without the limits over it. But my guess is it's also able to thrive in bad times, and maybe doesn't even feel the bad times because there's sharing the load so evenly, if it's done well, over a variety of people and viewpoints.
Yeah, when we had COVID and we shut down for a while, we had little like black ops, spurious little pop-up workouts, and we were back at it pretty quick. But fortunately, we haven't faced many dark days. I know some regions have had, unfortunately, they've had fatalities.
Mm-hmm.
Some have had sites shut down because they get in trouble with the school
Mm-hmm.
system or the park service. Um, but we're all there for each other. And like you said, is it so one hit at the top or one hit over here that everything else is able to fill in and provide support.
Yeah. So let me ask you something personal. So let's say you have a counterpart in another organization, someone's else working for kind of a structure, and they're saying, man, I resonate with Spit Valve. My work feels about like that. How can they take this shared leadership concept into what they do? I mean, I believe it's always applicable. And oftentimes the onus is on us individually to value shared leadership. And even if we're not the head honcho, we still have the ability to bring people into the fold to share some of the leadership decisions or responsibilities we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think some introspection,
Mm-hmm.
see where you're weak or not as strong, and see where
Mm-hmm.
you are strong.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, don't sell yourself short. You're
Mm-hmm.
not just some milk toast, dud. You
That's
obviously
right.
have some gifts, but you can't be gifted at everything. Um, you got to push yourself. Um, what's the thing? If you're gonna, I think it's from Ted Lasso. It's something. If you're gonna go into business, hire your best friend. That's always someone who will, and they talk about the five C's who will have the candor and whatever to tell
Mm-hmm.
you where you're heading off the rails here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, have a sense of perspective. You can't
Mm-hmm.
was you can't you can't boil the ocean. And
Mm-hmm.
I, I was like, writing down what's the first step, because if you say, oh, I want to get fit. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that's what does that mean? I say, like, okay, I want to eat baked chicken one time a week, something you can actually accomplish. What's the first step for me? That's I think we last week, right? It was it movement or persuasion? It's that first step.
Mm-hmm.
How do you take that first step? Because once you take the first step, the
Right.
second and the third and the fourth and fifth are easy. It's
Mm-hmm.
taking the time to plan and lay out that first step.
Yeah. Yeah. So so Pax, there's a whole lot that we're choosing not to talk about. So many of the concepts in this chapter we're going to do deep dives in the coming weeks. It's kind of interesting that this is first because it's a culmination of what we're about to study with mutual competence and the skills of leadership and the virtues of leadership. But I think there's a fun uh, phrase used at the end of the chapter called Black Tahoe. Do you mind describing to the Pax who haven't read this chapter when Dredd says execute a Black Tahoe? What's he mean by that?
Well, well, kind of funny story. At my old house in our cul-de-sac, we had a guy who lived three doors up, and he somehow through the neighborhood gossip, we found out that he was a serving adult entertainment to the interwebs. This was 15, 20 years ago. So he had like three T1s. Woo! So he was Mr. Bandwidth. And one morning, we woke up and there were seven black Tahoes in front of
Oh
his
my gosh.
in front of
Wow.
his driveway, and
Holy moly.
he was being let out. But
Yeah.
you talk about the FBI or in
Yeah.
the Avengers, Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
It's the black Tahoes that pull in and then they remove someone from the situation. Um, so to get black Tahoe is basically someone going into the leadership team and saying, "Hey, dude, this is not the
You're
right
out.
fit. It's
Yeah.
time. It's time to go." Um, yeah,
I tell you what, so funny. It's a funny phrase, and I like it. Unfortunately, it's an important part of leadership. Is you have to build the right team, but then you also the leader has got to continue to cultivate the culture. And sometimes someone's got to. Not everybody gets to stay, and you don't
yeah,
always know that. You have your best intentions when you hire someone, you invite someone to a leadership team, but time will tell whether they're a really good fit, whether they share the mission, whether they want to really get to the vision, whether they gel well with the team. But every once in a while, if you're serious enough about where you're going and you're committed enough to the team culture, sometimes people got to get black tahoed in order to keep the organization moving forward.
yeah. Well, one person can infect the group, where
Yeah.
you either spend so much time talking about Joe or overcoming Joe, that it's not worth it. Even if he's still doing some good.
Yeah.
Sorry, Joe, whoever you may be.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been approached. This was years ago. This was back my freshman year at Penn State, and I was kind of in a semi-leadership position for a freshman. And our band director had to come and pull me aside and basically talk to me and say, "Hey, this is where you're heading. If you want to continue to be a leader here, we can't have X, Y, and Z." And I was a cocky freshman, thought I was,
Mm.
I hung the moon.
Hmm.
Just I could do no wrong. I can hit all the high notes. Da da da. Everyone, bow before me.
Hmm.
And that did not go over well with the greater group. And I was absolutely totally unaware, totally unaware.
Hmm.
And this guy cared enough about me that fortunately, rather than doing the full black Tahoe, he did the light brown Tahoe and said, "Hey, we can save this."
But he
And then
also
went on.
obviously cared enough about the organization to say,
Yes.
Jeff, I want you here, but I'm not going to allow you to stay here and lose the organization.
Right. And just because you can hit all the high notes and whatever, it's not worth it to the organization to have you there.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, that conversation probably changed my life. And by my senior year, I was the section leader. But it ended up being a great. But without that talk, you know, would have been not so hot.
Well, I love that story. I think oftentimes as leaders, the people element's a really hard thing. And a lot of us are guilty of allowing people to stay longer than they should and it dragging things down. And I think your story should give us all courage to at least have the conversation because people can change. Some people aren't always aware of their effect and they're not intending to do that. And when confronted with the truth, they have a decision to make. And you saw that and made a decision that took you to another level and probably took the organization to another level, but it
Right.
definitely didn't drag it down because there was a leader that was committed enough. And so that encourages me to not be afraid of those conversations. Maxwell writes in his books that the law of the big mo, one of the most important things for a leader is to keep momentum going. And I really believe that momentum is often a product of culture. When culture gets bad, which is a people problem, momentum gets slowed down. And when you get momentum going in the wrong direction, holy moly, watch out. It's not good. And so if you're going to keep momentum going in the right direction, a lot of times that's going to be through the right culture, which is a product of the people that you've brought to the table and making sure that they're working together well and they're all moving in the same direction. And your organization cannot afford to have the wrong person in the wrong seat for too long. Sometimes you might just have to call in the black Tahoe.
I think there's one pulling up your driveway right now.
No, easy now. Holy moly, it's menthol. So, well, Smith, I appreciated our conversation. I'm excited to see where our organization, where our region goes with you as our Nantan. So what was your roles before? Because you were on the SLT before, so you weren't picked randomly. Your number just didn't get drawn randomly out of the crowd. You've been kind of a committed member of the SLT, continuing to were a part of this growth. So what were you doing before this, and then any final parting thoughts as Nantan as far as where we're going as an organization and things you might need from us?
Before we broke off, I was sort of just helping fly. I mean, I guess I helped with Facebook group, the Google Sheets for the sign up stuff. And this is where you have different groups of people. You can have a vision guy, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
have a different guy be the articulation guy.
Mm-hmm.
We basically said, "Hey, this is what we need," and I said, "I think I can do that." At that prompted the individual Q sign up sheets, and then the master sheet, which I blatantly stole from Carpex. I
Mm-hmm.
saw something the Carpex had, and I said, "Yeah, let's do that."
Mm-hmm.
I've been the Weasel Shaker since we founded,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's now Menthol's purview. I'll still be shaking a little bit of Weasel there if you're not getting your back blast in on time. Look for a text from me. Um, but yeah, guys, this is a late life changing organization for a lot of people. When you hear
Yeah.
stories from, I don't want to name names because I'll leave some
All right.
out, but there are guys here who this has. It might even be literally saved their lives.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
to have that kind of uh, clout,
Mm-hmm.
that importance. Um, I take it very seriously. The SLT takes it seriously, but we also want to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, and that's so the door is always open, kind of thing. So any kind of suggestion, no matter how out of left field, right field, whatever, that bring it forward. Not necessarily to just me. And free to lead. Um, and the SLT is not there to say no. It's for us to see, oh, that's a great idea. How can we put more
Yeah.
power behind it? Um,
And really quick,
or what?
that's been my experience. I didn't
Yeah,
even know there was an SLT. And then when I heard free to lead and any of the ideas was normally like, great. I didn't ever feel like I was on my own. Someone heard my idea, you're free to lead, take it and run, but also, hey, how can we get behind it? And let's talk through it because we've tried some other things and I want this to be successful for you. So let's talk through some, and add in some perspective and wisdom and experience that will actually make what I was trying to do more successful.
right. And maybe we take your idea and we tweak it a little bit, or maybe we add to it. And then
Mm-hmm.
you have something that you thought, you were trying to get a little 20-yard pass down the field, and together we can make it a 50-yard pass down the field. Let's
Well, that's how Q Source was. I remember I didn't know, but I think I texted you or Rio a couple years ago and I said, I found this Q Source book. Have you guys ever done it? I'd like to start adding it to quarantine. And someone said, well, talk to Sharkbait. He's the SLT. And then they said, come to the meeting. And then three other guys showed up and we're saying the same thing. Hey, can we all do Q Source together? So it wasn't all on my shoulders. It was wonderful. And there was the group saying, yeah, let's all do this together. And so it got lighter when I brought the idea to the table. It got lighter and easier, and now it's been more successful because it wasn't just Blake's idea for Wednesday morning coffee. It was more people that were rallying around a similar idea, and now Q Source is a great part of our weekly rhythm on different sites. So that's my encouragement. I love the culture that you and the other leaders have created, and how you're encouraging us to stay involved and get involved.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well, Nantan, we salute you. We thank you for being willing to lead us into the future of our region. We're excited where it's going. We'll consider this the Nantan's address for 2025. And
State of the
so,
Empire.
State of the Empire. Pax, appreciate you joining us for another episode of the Q Source Podcast.